scratched the surface of this thing so far, and I think a lot of people have barely scratched the surface because there's so much here. There's so many cool functions, and there's so many different ways that they can interact. We haven't even talked about the morphe yet, or the ribbon, or I mean, there's so much here. And if it was just this section here, it would be an incredibly powerful and desirable polyphonic analog synthesizer, and everyone would be happy. But there's also this, and I know a lot of people might think of this as kind of the sequencing section or something else, but really what we're looking at here is this is a modular analog polyphonic, and there aren't too many of those in existence. There aren't too many of them because it's such a complex concept to take a polyphonic synthesizer, a synthesizer with basically 12 oscillators and 12 filters, and then allow modulation sources to be routed from modulation sources to those oscillators, to those filters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It gets incredibly complex. People don't usually do that. I mean, usually a polyphonic synthesizer is one thing and a modular synthesizer is something totally different. But we have, at least as far as modulation is concerned, a modular polyphonic here. And so today I'm going to be demonstrating the mods section of this matrix. Now, granted, it's been sitting on presets, and presets, as you might know, I haven't really covered it because it's super straightforward. When it's set to presets and it's pink, you can just choose a patch to get what you want. You have 8 different banks of this many patches. So that's really great. You could just choose 6 and then come over here. There's nothing there. It's a default. But yeah, so that's how basically the presets works. But today I'm going to be primarily addressing how the mods work. And we'll get to the sequencer when we deal with the sequencer. And at some point I'm going to have to do the morph button because I didn't do it when I was talking about the morph. So we'll get to that. But today we're just talking about modulation routing, or the modularity of this incredible polyphonic synthesizer. Okay. As you probably remember from the Matrix Brute, now I don't know if you watched the Matrix Brute videos, perhaps you have, perhaps you haven't, or you've watched somebody else's videos or whatever. Making a connection between a modulation source and a modulation destination is super easy. First of all, you're going to have an idea, and then you're going to want to implement that idea. But to implement that idea, all you have to do is look at your modulation sources along the left here. They're lettered with letters. And basically you have the VCF envelope up here as a modulation source, the mod envelope here. Voices. Now you might be wondering what voices is. C is marked voices. The 6 different voices are actually modulation sources in themselves. And it just means that whatever voice is playing is a modulation source out of the 6. It's like 6 different modulation values. And there are different ways they can be set up, and we'll talk about that later. But basically, it's not as confusing as it seems. Basically, all 6 voices get a value and amount, and there's different settings you can do to choose them to decide how they're going to modulate. But that's what that is. Okay, so you have 3 different LFOs, all these guys over here. Key. Basically the keyboard itself acts as a modulation source, going from low voltage to high voltage. And the sequencer as a modulation source is, it's either the keys or the sequencer, depending on whether the sequencer is being used. Velocity, how hard you hit a key. Aftertouch, how hard you press down on the key past just pressing it down. And then the last 3 are combinations of the wheel, the X part of the morphe, the ribbon, the Y part of the Morphe, and expression, input, and Z, how far you push down on the Morphe. Okay, so those are your modulation sources. As for your destination, on the Matrix Brute, it was such that you also had preset destinations. And that's what sort of defined the Matrix Brute's matrix. And then you had a few at the end that you could assign. Well, they decided with the PolyBrute that you could assign all of them. So you have 8 different destinations right now that you can assign. As you can see right here, 3 of them have been assigned. The first one is pitch global. Both oscillators are affected by whatever modulation source you connect there. The second one, the VCA, whatever modulation source you connect to it is going to affect the VCA. And third, voice pan, which is basically your stereo knob up here at this point under these current settings, where the modulation source will modulate where each voice lands in the stereo field, which is pretty cool. But let's say you want to do something different. Like, let's say I'm going to connect the first modulation destination to just the pitch of oscillator 1. So I just hold down the button for the destination I want to choose to assign, and then turn the knob of the thing you want to be the destination. And as you can see, it turned to pitch VCO1. And that's all you have to do for any of these knobs, any of these sliders. You can't set a button as a destination, unfortunately, but that would be really cool if you could. And then don't forget over here on the other side, any of these knobs, with the exception of, I think, the headphone volume and the fine tune, maybe the master volume, is that a destination? I feel like I've done that even in this video series. Anyway, so yeah, there's just a couple of exceptions over here. Buttons, of course, you can't modulate, but the knobs you can. So you might then say, well, holy cow, that's only 8 destinations. I have all these sources and so few destinations. Well, if you look up in the left-hand corner, upper left-hand corner of the screen here, you'll see mods 1/4. There are 4 pages of 8 possible destinations. And you access those using these first 4 buttons. So instead of holding a button and choosing a modulation source, you just press the button. Now it says 2 of 4, and you'll notice those modulation destinations have gone away. And so we have 4 pages of 8 destinations, which that's a lot of destinations. I think there are something like 64 channels of modulation. And so that's a lot, especially for a polyphonic synthesizer. People don't even typically deal with modular concerns like that with a polyphonic synthesizer. So this is something way different. This is something new and incredible. Even the Korg PS series did not have this level of modular control. This is something truly amazing.